Inside Pennsylvania's darkest female killers, shocking murders, and true crime documentary. Welcome back to Justice Reversed, where real crimes meet real justice. Number 1. Miranda Barbour. They said it was a thrill kill, but what really happened in that red Honda CR-V shocked even seasoned detectives. In 2013, 18-year-old Miranda Camille Dean Barbour and her newlywed husband-elect were barely 3 weeks into their marriage when they began planning a murder. They didn't know their victim. They didn't need to. They just wanted to kill. Troy LaFera, a 42-year-old electrical engineer from Pennsylvania, was looking for companionship when he responded to a Craigslist ad. The ad was placed by Miranda, who offered her company for $100, 0 cents. They agreed to meet at a mall parking lot, but Troy never made it home. As Troy sat in the passenger seat of Miranda's car, Elite lay hidden in the back seat under a blanket. Once Miranda gave the code, "Did you see the stars tonight?" Elite sprang up, wrapping a cord around Troy's neck. Miranda stabbed him over 20 times. He was gasping for air, she later told investigators. The couple dumped his body in an alley and, hours later, celebrated at a strip club for Elite's birthday. Police traced LaFerrara's final call back to Miranda. Within weeks, both were arrested. But the most disturbing revelations were yet to come. From her jail cell, Miranda claimed she had killed before, not once, but at least 22 times, possibly up to 100. She described herself as a member of a satanic cult, starting at age 13 in North Pole, Alaska. She said her cult leader taught her to kill and that she only targeted bad people. She even claimed a murderous alter ego, Super Miranda. Authorities were skeptical. The FBI offered to help investigate, but no other murders were confirmed. "There's no verification beyond what she told the media," said Northumberland County District Attorney Tony Rossini. A family member described her as a manipulative liar. Miranda and Elite Barbour pleaded guilty to second-degree murder in 2015 to avoid the death penalty. A Pennsylvania judge sentenced them both to life in prison without parole. During sentencing, Miranda stared ahead, expressionless. Her face, still youthful, gave little clue to the darkness prosecutors described. Troy's sister addressed the Barbours. "You will not find any forgiveness here." Media outlets quickly labeled Miranda the real-life Dexter. Her story went global, flooding newsrooms with calls from families wondering if their loved ones were among her alleged victims. From satanic cults to Craigslist killings, the case exposed the vulnerabilities of an increasingly connected world. So what can we learn? Never meet strangers from online platforms without precautions. A background of trauma does not excuse acts of violence. False confessions can cloud justice and mislead the public. Behind every headline is a life, stolen, ruined, or lost in the chaos. Miranda Barbour's case is not just about murder, it's about the terrifying intersection of untreated trauma, delusion, and opportunity. And it reminds us, evil doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes, it smiles through a car window and asks if you've seen the stars tonight. Number 2. Sharon Flanagan. She checked into a hotel with her son. Hours later, a guest found the toddler face down in the tub. On July 1, 2012, 33-year-old Sharon Flanagan arrived at a Best Western hotel in Pittsburgh with her 2-year-old son, Stephen. She told staff they planned to visit a local water park. But her real plan, prosecutors said, was far darker. Sharon and her husband were going through a bitter divorce. She had lost 70% custody of Stephen and was reportedly devastated. In the weeks prior, her online searches included leading cause of toddler death and why is Casey Anthony so popular. She had taken photos of Stephen playing in water and had previously threatened to kill both herself and the child. Her ex-husband tried twice to have her committed for psychiatric treatment, but the court denied the petition. At 8:30 p.m., screams echoed through the hotel hallway. Sharon was found crying, "My baby! My baby!" Guest Dominic Nettie rushed to her room where he discovered a lifeless child floating face down in the bathtub. His eyes were wide open and glazed over, he later testified. Paramedics rushed Stephen to the hospital. He died 5 days later. Sharon's story changed repeatedly. She initially claimed Stephen had slipped. Then she had a back injury and couldn't lift him. She admitted to lying about trying to rescue him. Detectives noted her lack of concern about Stephen's condition, and her refusal to visit him in the hospital. Investigators uncovered damning evidence. Sharon had chosen a hotel hours from home, far from anyone she knew. She packed a back brace, later used to excuse her inaction. She illegally recorded her interview with detectives, and during the trial, she made a wild accusation that Stephen's father had sexually abused their son, a claim prosecutors called baseless and malicious. In September 2013, Sharon stood trial for first-degree murder. The jury deliberated for 5 hours. When the guilty verdict was read, Sharon erupted in court and had to be removed. At sentencing, Judge Jeffrey Manning handed down life without parole. Stephen's father described his son as a miracle baby and called Sharon a horrible person who killed my son and will never hurt another child. The trauma extended beyond the family. Dominic Nettie and his girlfriend, witnesses to the aftermath, later required treatment for PTSD. This case highlighted a brutal act masked in calculated planning, but more importantly, it exposed the tragic consequences when early warning signs are overlooked. So what can be learned? Custody disputes can turn deadly if mental illness is ignored. Repeated threats should never be dismissed. Behavioral changes, especially in parents, must be taken seriously by legal and health systems. Sharon Flanagan remains in a Pennsylvania prison, her life confined behind bars, but the question still haunts those left behind. Why did a mother, once seen as loving, choose silence over saving? Not all tragedies happen in silence. Some come with a scream, too late to stop what's already been done. Number 3. Mary Jane Fonda. She wasn't a stranger. She sat in the same pews, prayed under the same roof, and pulled the trigger in cold blood inside a church. In January 2008, a murder inside a Pennsylvania church sent shockwaves through the tight-knit community of Springfield Township. The victim, 42-year-old Rhonda Smith, was found face down in the church office, shot twice in the head at close range. The last person anyone expected was responsible was Mary Jane Fonda, a 65-year-old congregant who had spent decades volunteering at Trinity Evangelical Lutheran Church. Fonda had long struggled to connect with others. Described as eccentric, socially awkward, and often overlooked, she had developed a deep, unreciprocated fixation on the church pastor Greg Shreves. When Rhonda Smith, charismatic, kind, and newly employed as a secretary, began receiving the attention and support of the pastor and church members, Fonda saw her as a threat. Prosecutors argued it was jealousy, not faith, that brought her to the church that morning. On January 23, 2008, Fonda called the church to confirm that Smith was alone. Smith's computer activity stopped at 10:58 a.m. Minutes later, she was dead. Fonda left the church and drove to a hair appointment where she casually left her wig behind. Forensics later found gunshot residue on the steering wheel and gear shift of her vehicle. 2 months later, fishermen at Lake Nakamixon discovered a .38 caliber revolver registered to Fonda. Though she claimed to have discarded the gun in 1994, forensic testing proved it was the weapon used to kill Smith. Fonda was arrested on April 1st and charged with first-degree murder. Her trial began in October. Prosecutors presented a timeline so precise that jurors could map her movement within minutes of the killing. Despite her insistence that, in the name of God, she did not kill Rhonda, the jury found her guilty after just days of testimony. At sentencing, she stood silent, dressed in gray, showing no visible emotion as she received life without parole. The case drew national attention. What made it even darker was the unresolved disappearance of Fonda's father in 1993. Though never charged, police long suspected her involvement. After her conviction, investigators returned to the now demolished property, searching for his remains, but found nothing. Mary Jane Fonda died in prison in 2018. She later admitted she might have had something to do with it, though claimed to remember little about the day Rhonda was killed. Her case still unsettles the community. "We lost a daughter," Rhonda's father said. "Nothing changes that. We live with this pain every day." These crimes remind us of chilling truths. Emotional isolation can turn lethal when unchecked. Obsession, when fed in silence, can become violent. Unresolved trauma must never be ignored, even in adults. Not all killers look like monsters. Sometimes they bake pies for church events. Sometimes they smile politely from the last pew. And sometimes the deepest darkness hides behind the quietest devotion, which would kill you. Number 4. Nakola Franklin. It was meant to be the happiest day of her life. Instead, she traded a wedding dress for a prison jumpsuit before the sun even rose. In the early hours of August 11, 2012, police in Whitehall Township, Pennsylvania, were dispatched to a second-floor apartment after a panic 911 call. Inside, they found 36-year-old Billy Brewster bleeding from 2 stab wounds to the chest. Outside, guests began arriving in suits and dresses, unaware they were stepping into a crime scene, not a wedding. Just hours earlier, Nicola Franklin, Brewster's 31-year-old fiancée, was finalizing the last wedding details. She had bathed the kids, cooked, decorated, and waited. Brewster, meanwhile, had gone out with friends for an impromptu bachelor night. When he returned home around 2 a.m., allegedly intoxicated, an argument erupted. Franklin's version was one of self-defense and desperation. She testified that Brewster, enraged and drunk, tried to leave with their infant son. Fearing for the baby's safety and reliving years of abuse, she grabbed a kitchen knife. "I was trying to protect my child," she told the jury. "I didn't even know I had cut him." But the 911 call told a different story. Prosecutors played audio where Franklin shouted, "You're going to die tonight, and die, bitch." Witnesses, including Brewster's cousin and his wife, described a chaotic scene. Franklin yelling for a knife, Brewster raising his hands and pleading, "Is this really what you want to do?" Franklin lunged, stabbing him twice in the torso. One blow pierced his heart. He staggered outside, collapsed, and died at the hospital shortly after 3 a.m. Officer Matthew Rezick, who arrived at the scene, said Franklin appeared dazed, confused, and in shock. At her arraignment, she sobbed, "I didn't kill him on purpose." The trial in May 2013 lasted several days. The defense framed it as a tragic accident, a broken woman pushed to her limit. The prosecution, however, focused on the rage, the threats, and the fatal precision of the stabbing. After only 3 hours, the jury returned a verdict: guilty of first-degree murder. On July 16th, Franklin was sentenced to life in prison. Wearing a simple blouse, she listened in silence. The Brewster family wept. "We came for a wedding," his mother said, "and ended up planning a funeral." The case drew national attention, not for its gore, but for its surreal collision of joy and violence. A woman, once preparing to vow till death do us part, had delivered death herself. 3 lessons emerge from this tragedy. Emotional abuse and control can escalate unpredictably. Words spoken in anger can become evidence of intent. Major life events can trigger suppressed trauma with lethal results. There were no vows, no dancing, no cake. Just a photograph of the bride in handcuffs hours before the ceremony, and a groom lowered into the ground before he could say, "I do." In the end, this wasn't a love story gone wrong. It was a warning about what happens when fear, fury, and silence collide. Number 5. Yvonne Hiller. She clocked out, got in her car, and came back with a gun. What followed inside the craft factory left 2 co-workers dead and a city asking, why didn't anyone stop her? Yvonne Hiller had worked at the Kraft Foods plant in Northeast Philadelphia for 15 years, but on September 9, 2010, her simmering paranoia reached a fatal boil. That night, she became the city's deadliest workplace shooter in years. At 43, Hiller believed her co-workers were spraying her with chemicals and deer urine. She filed complaints with OSHA. Kraft investigated, found nothing. That Thursday evening, after a heated altercation with co-workers Tanya Wilson and LaTanya Brown, Hiller was suspended. Security escorted her out and took her badge. But she didn't go home. Instead, she sat in her car, called her boyfriend and said, "I've had enough." Then she retrieved her legally registered .307 Magnum revolver. Security guards at the plant gate froze. One ran, another failed to alert management or call 911. Hiller forced her way back inside. She knew exactly where to go, up to the 3rd floor mixing room, her usual post. 4 co-workers were in the break room. Hiller told one woman, "You can leave, this isn't about you." Then she opened fire. Tanya Wilson was shot in the side. LaTanya Brown was shot in the head. Both died instantly. A 3rd co-worker, Bryant Dalton, was shot in the neck but survived. Hiller continued moving through the building, firing at a supervisor and mechanic. Missing both, that mechanic became a hero. Using a walkie-talkie and cell phone, he tracked Hiller's movements and helped guide SWAT officers. Meanwhile, Hiller barricaded herself in a darkened office, called 911, and spoke to a police supervisor for 40 minutes. By 9:40 p.m., officers found her curled in a fetal position beside her revolver. 7 other employees had been hiding in a nearby closet, frozen in fear. In 2012, Hiller waived her right to a jury trial to avoid the death penalty. Common Pleas Judge Benjamin Lerner found her guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of attempted murder, and multiple related charges. At sentencing, Hiller said she was sorry and admitted, "I knew I needed help." The judge handed down 2 consecutive life sentences without parole, calling it a symbolic statement of the preciousness of the lives lost. Outside the courtroom, the grief was raw. LaTonya Brown's daughters said there would never be closure. Bryant Dalton, who survived the shooting, said, "My life was basically destroyed." In a civil trial, the victims' families won $46,500,000 from U.S. Security Associates, the firm that failed to stop Hiller's re-entry. "You can't just run away in a crisis," the jury was told. "You're supposed to act like a security guard." This case left behind hard truths. Workplace complaints tied to mental illness should never be ignored. Security failures can have life or math consequences. Warning signs often appear but aren't taken seriously. The plant has since reopened, but for 2 families there are no holidays, no birthdays, and no normal days. Only memories of what should have been just another Thursday night shift. Because when systems fail and help never comes, fear doesn't just grow, it pulls the trigger. Number 6. Michele Kalina. She lived in a 1-bedroom apartment, but behind a locked door, 5 dead infants, hidden for years. Her secrets stayed silent until her daughter opened the closet. For 14 years, no one asked questions. Michele Kalina, a nurse's aide from Reading, Pennsylvania, kept to herself. Her husband was chronically ill. Her daughter lived under the same roof. And her longtime lover, married, unaware, fathered at least 6 of her children. Between 1996 and 2010, Kalina gave birth to 5 babies in secret. Each time she told no one. Each time the child disappeared. It wasn't until the summer of 2010, when her teenage daughter opened a sealed closet, that the horror came to light. Inside, a cooler filled with cement, cardboard boxes, plastic tubs, and garbage bags. Each held skeletal remains. Some infants were wrapped in towels. One was entombed in concrete. Another, stored in a small cooler beside household cleaning supplies. Kalina's daughter called the police. The first responding officers mistakenly said the remains were not human, and they were thrown out. Hours later, more bones were found. This time, a full investigation began. Kalina confessed to some, but not all, of the births. She admitted she was having an affair with a co-worker, but claimed she couldn't remember many of the deliveries due to alcohol blackouts. Investigators believe she killed the newborns through suffocation or neglect, though exact causes of death couldn't always be confirmed due to decomposition. Dr. Jerome Gottlieb, a forensic psychiatrist, testified that Kalina suffered from severe depression and post-traumatic stress disorder due to childhood abuse. She kept the remains because she didn't want to forget what she'd done, he said. Prosecutors argued she acted with chilling intent. Judge Linda Ludgate agreed. "She put those babies in tubs like garbage," Ludgate said at sentencing. "Then she got pregnant again, and again, and again." Kalina, 45, was sentenced to 20 to 40 years in prison after pleading guilty to 3rd-degree murder and multiple counts of concealing a child's death. Her family was left reeling. Her husband, Jeffrey, who had no knowledge of the pregnancies or the affair, testified, "I still love her. I would have raised those children." Their daughter Elizabeth, just 19 when she found the bodies, told the court she still visited her mother in prison. The case shocked the nation and the world. Experts struggled to find comparisons. Dr. Peggy Bowen Hartung said Kalina fit the definition of a serial killer, adding, "She didn't allow maternal attachment." News outlets called it one of the most haunting child death cases in modern U.S. history. From this tragedy, painful truths emerge. Long-term secrets within families can become silent crimes. Mental illness, untreated, doesn't stay hidden, it festers. Denial doesn't erase danger, it only delays discovery. No one ever heard the cries of those newborns, no birth certificates, no funeral, just silence, sealed behind a locked closet. And when shame replaces help, even a mother can forget what life means. Number 7. Carolyn Ann King. She met him during a prison work release. Weeks later, they left 2 bodies in their wake, and a nation watching the manhunt unfold. Carolyn Ann King was 28 when she helped carry out one of the most disturbing crime sprees of 1993. Her partner was Bradley Martin, a 21-year-old inmate she met through conjugal visits. On September 15, 1993, they arrived at the home of Guy Goodman, a 74-year-old retired florist from Pennsylvania. Goodman had mentored Martin in prison, offering friendship and support, but when he refused to give them money, things turned fatal. Martin struck Goodman with a vase. King helped bind him with cords, placed a plastic bag over his head, and wrapped him in a bedspread. They dragged him into the basement and left. Goodman died by suffocation. The couple fled in his car, with his credit cards and checkbook, beginning a cross-country escape that would span thousands of miles. Over the next week, Martin and King used Goodman's financial assets in Ohio, Indiana, and South Dakota. Surveillance footage and employee IDs confirmed their presence. Meanwhile, Goodman's decomposing body was discovered on September 25, 10 days after the murder. On September 26, they abducted 59-year-old Donna Martz from a hotel parking lot in Bismarck, North Dakota. According to King, Martin stabbed Martz and forced her into the trunk. They dumped Goodman's car and took hers instead. In the Nevada desert around September 30, Martz was forced to strip before Martin shot her in the head. Her body was abandoned for wild animals. A nationwide manhunt followed. On October 5th, California Highway Patrol spotted Martz's car near San Diego. A high-speed chase ended in Yuma, Arizona, with Martin and King in custody. At first, they denied everything, but King eventually cooperated, giving the FBI a map to Martz's body. During trial, prosecutors called Goodman's death torture. The jury agreed. Both Martin and King were sentenced to death in Pennsylvania for first-degree murder. They later received life sentences in Nevada for Martz's killing. Years later, appeals led to a change. Courts ruled that improper testimony influenced the original sentencing. In 2005, Carolyn King's death sentence was commuted to life without parole. She remains incarcerated in Pennsylvania. In 2010, she received another life term in Nevada. Martin's death sentence was overturned in 2015 due to a failed plea deal arrangement. The victims' families never found full closure. "She never said a word," said Judy Goodman, daughter of Guy Goodman, after King's resentencing. "We still don't understand why." From this case, harsh truths remain. Romantic delusion can override morality in the wrong hands. Escaped inmates are never just a risk to the system. They're a risk to everyone. If someone's past is violent, their future must be taken seriously. Justice delayed can still be delivered, but some crimes leave questions that no sentence can answer. When murder becomes a method of escape, no road leads far enough. Number 8. Lisa Michele Lambert, Tabitha Buck, and Lawrence Butch Yunkin. She vanished behind her own front door, lured by a lie, betrayed by a classmate, and left her mother with only one whispered truth to cling to. Lisa Michele Lambert, only 19, was consumed by jealousy when her boyfriend briefly dated 16-year-old Lori Shaw. That obsession grew into a calculated scheme. By December 1991, Lambert, accompanied by her friend Tabitha Buck, began stalking Lori, taunting her at the mall, slashing her hair, vocally threatening her future. Lori's mother, Hazel, filed complaints, but the danger went unaddressed. On December 19, Lambert orchestrated an elaborate ruse. A woman pretended to be Lori's guidance counselor, calling the house to arrange a morning meeting. Hazel left. The next day, December 20, Lambert and 17-year-old Buck arrived at Lori's home, driven by Lawrence Yunkin. When Lori, alone inside, opened the door, the attack unfolded with chilling precision. Lambert and Buck forced their way in. They stabbed Lori multiple times, bound her, and slit her throat. Not in a struggle, but in an execution-style assault. Her hair was hacked off. Defensive wounds showed fear and desperation. As Lori lay dying, she whispered to her mother when she returned, "Michele did it." Hazel cradled her daughter, robbed of time. Within the hour, police arrested Lambert, Buck, and Yunkin at a nearby bowling alley. Yunkin disposed of bloody clothes and the murder weapon, yet the case moved swiftly. In Lancaster County courts, the truth emerged. Lambert was convicted of first-degree murder and criminal conspiracy, sentenced to life without parole. Buck was convicted of second-degree murder. Yunkin ended up pleading guilty to third-degree murder after a plea deal evaporated under perjury charges, receiving a reduced sentence. Lambert's appeals journey became a legal spectacle. In 1997, a federal judge controversially declared her actually innocent, citing prosecutorial misconduct. The ruling prompted outrage, and citizens demanded justice for Lori. Within months, an appellate court reversed the decision, reinstating Lambert's life sentence. She remains imprisoned, expressionless in court, a figure of controversy as she quietly serves her sentence. Butch was released on parole in late 2019 under court restrictions, while Yunkin served his term and faded quietly into the background, forgotten by many, though not by Lori's grieving family. Lori's parents turned unimaginable grief into action. Hazel's tireless advocacy led to the passage of Lori's Law, Pennsylvania's first anti-stalking legislation, in 1993. "I lost my daughter," Hazel said in court, "but I won't lose my fight." This case teaches devastating lessons. Stalking is not harmless, it's a threat that must be intercepted early. Deceptive manipulations, like fake counseling calls, expose vulnerabilities in safety we assume exist. Systems must act decisively when warning signs arise, or lives can never be reclaimed. The courtroom statute reads, first-degree murder, echoing words never spoken by the victim, except that final whisper, that single truth. The sentence and trials occupy paper and cell blocks, but the memory of Lori's last breath haunts deeper, because bullying born from jealousy isn't just cruelty, it can be the architect of irreversible loss. Number 9. Stacey Newkirk-Smalls. In a serene Philadelphia suburb, a hidden fracture in a family's trust erupted into a chilling act of vengeance, leaving a nation questioning the depths of human despair. In Tacony, Pennsylvania, Stacey Newkirk-Smalls, a 41-year-old mother, shocked the world in 2012 with a heinous act of filicide, driven by what experts call spousal revenge. Devastated by her husband Ron Smalls' alleged affair with her adult daughter from a prior relationship, discovered on Mother's Day, Stacey unraveled. Ron admitted to marital problems and suggested therapy, which she dismissed as unnecessary. On May 24, 2012, at 4 p.m., Ron returned to their Dittman Street home to a scene of unimaginable horror. 18-month-old twins Adam and Eve dead. 4-year-old daughter Stacey poisoned but alive, and his wife bleeding from self-inflicted wrist wounds after a suicide attempt with pills. Police revealed Stacey poisoned both twins, drowned one, and strangled the other. A method Commissioner Charles Ramsey called a tragedy. 2 young babies dead, and there is no excuse for that. She also tried poisoning her older daughter, who survived unharmed. 4 notes, including one to Ron, stating, "I hope this makes you feel 1/1000th of the pain I feel," confirmed premeditation, as Assistant District Attorney Mark Cipoletti described it as a well-thought-out, well-planned-out premeditated act. The investigation was swift. Stacey was hospitalized at Frankfurt Hospital, arrested on May 25, and arraigned the next day. Despite her mother, Yvonne Newkirk, insisting, "I suspect my daughter didn't do it," and friends calling her very loving, Stacey confessed. No history of mental illness or addiction was noted, though relatives believe she snapped, with friend C. Chekijai Coley asking, "What happens when an ultimate betrayal happens?" In January 2014, a one-day non-jury trial before Common Pleas Judge Jeffrey Meinhard convicted the 42-year-old Stacey of 2 counts of third-degree murder, acquitting her of attempted murder. Standing impassive in court, she faced life without parole for 1 count and 20-40 years concurrently for the other. In this viral true crime case, mandated by Pennsylvania law for multiple murders, the community was shaken. A memorial grew outside the home with neighbors' cards. Ron, heartbroken, discarded his children's belongings, sought therapy, and vowed he might never speak to Stacey again. Yvonne declared, "Stacey, your family is with you. We love you." Internationally, the case sparked discussions on parental homicides, with expert Philip Resnick noting spousal revenge as a key motive in the 250-300 annual U.S. cases, and Cipoletti stating such acts have no social or economic boundaries. Reflecting on this Pennsylvania mother murders twins tragedy, key warnings emerge. Address marital strife through counseling to prevent destructive escalation. Vigilantly report signs of child endangerment to authorities. Cultivate open family communication to diffuse potential betrayals. This haunting child murder case, gripping millions, underscores how unchecked emotional wounds can shatter lives, urging society to bolster mental health support for fragile families. Number 10. Rebecca Ann Olenchock. Some exits aren't found on roads, they are forged in fire, fear, and finality. In a Pennsylvania woods, one young woman decided death was the only way out. In October 2010, 24-year-old Rebecca Ann Olenchock was living in a shack in a homeless encampment in Bristol Township, Bucks County, with her mother, Kimberly Venose. Their relationship had eroded under the weight of poverty, frustration, and isolation. Rebecca had been saving to leave, planning to start over in Tennessee with a boyfriend she met online, but Kimberly, who was unemployed and had a warrant for probation violation, refused to leave. Worse, she drained Rebecca's savings on fast food and Halloween items. Then came the final rupture. Kimberly allegedly threatened to involve members of an outlaw motorcycle gang to stop her daughter from escaping. On the morning of October 17, 2010, Rebecca awoke in the shack they shared. As her mother slept, she picked up a baseball bat and struck her repeatedly, 10 to 15 times, fracturing her skull. She then poured kerosene around the bed, lit a match, and padlocked the shack door. Convinced her mother was dead, she burned her bloodied clothes, packed her things, and fled in her Kia sedan to Tennessee. But Kimberly didn't die immediately. Despite the severe head trauma and burns over 50% of her body, she broke through the flaming wall and staggered toward a road, crying for help. To a paramedic, she whispered, "My daughter is trying to kill me." She succumbed shortly after to heart failure caused by her injuries. Detectives tracked Rebecca through her cell phone. 2 days later, they arrested her in Johnson City, Tennessee, alongside her boyfriend. During interrogation, she initially claimed a large black man had killed her mother. Confronted with Kimberly's dying words, she changed her story again, until finally confessing, "If I stayed here in the woods," she told police, "my life would be wasted too." Her non-jury trial began in June 2011. Bucks County Judge Albert Ceparulo found her guilty of first-degree murder, arson, and possession of an instrument of crime. He later amended the verdict to guilty but mentally ill, citing overwhelming premeditation, especially her purchase of kerosene the night before, and the act of locking the burning shack. She was sentenced in October 2011 to life in prison without parole, plus concurrent terms for the additional charges. The judge mandated psychiatric treatment. Family members, including Kimberly's sister, expressed sorrow but also bewilderment. "Why didn't she just leave?" her aunt asked. In a private moment after the trial, she hugged Rebecca, cried, and offered to visit her in prison. This disturbing case highlights 3 urgent truths. Never normalize toxic threats, even within families. Recognize the mental toll of homelessness before desperation turns deadly. And when someone plans an escape, listen before it's too late. She didn't just run from poverty, she ran from a life she believed would kill her slowly, and chose, instead, a violent, irreversible escape. The fire she lit consumed far more than a home. Evil doesn't always wear a mask. Sometimes it sits beside us, on church pews, in hotel rooms, or behind a steering wheel, waiting for silence to fall before it strikes. The women you've just met didn't just take lives. They shattered the illusion of safety we all cling to. But their stories aren't over. Not here. Pennsylvania isn't the only state with secrets, and the shadows stretch further than you think. So if you're ready to explore the darkest corners of true crime, where justice collides with betrayal, subscribe to Justice Reversed and ring the bell icon. You'll be the first to uncover every chilling twist, each shocking verdict, and the haunting truths that follow. Because in this world, the quietest killers often leave the loudest echoes.